ministers here in New York this week, I hosted a session to hear from doctors who have recently returned from Gaza. And the stories they told will stay with me forever. One told of the screams of toddlers, and the scream of a toddler who she had operated on without full anesthetics, and how she...
Gaza peace deal on the brink. Yvette Cooper's explosive UN revelations. Before we dive into what could be the most significant diplomatic development of this decade, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because UK Connors is your gateway to the political machinations that mainstream media won't tell you about. Trust me, you'll want to be notified when we break down the next seismic shift in Westminster. Right, let's get straight to the point. Yvette Cooper has just dropped what might be the political bombshell of 2025. Fresh from rubbing shoulders with world leaders at the UN summit, our foreign secretary has made claims that would make even the most seasoned diplomatic correspondents do a double-take. She's suggesting, and I use that word deliberately because Cooper is far too shrewd to make definitive statements without cover, that the international community is on the absolute brink of securing a Gaza peace deal. Now, hold on a minute. Before you roll your eyes and mutter something about politicians making promises they can't keep, consider this. Cooper isn't some backbench MP looking for headlines. She is a foreign secretary of the United Kingdom, and she's just returned from New York where she's been in rooms that most of us will never see, having conversations that could reshape the Middle East. When someone at that level starts talking about moments of momentum, you sit up and pay attention. But here's where it gets really interesting and slightly unsettling if you're paying close attention to the political chess game being played. Cooper claims the world has reached a moment where it wants to end this war. That's diplomatic speak for saying the big players have finally aligned their interests enough to actually do something about it. And the catalyst? Donald Trump signaling that a peace deal is within reach. Yes, you heard that correctly. The same Trump who's just taken office is apparently the key to unlocking a peace process that has eluded international diplomacy for 2 years. Cooper, representing Labour Britain, is essentially admitting that American leadership, specifically Trump's brand of it, might be what finally brings this conflict to an end. The irony is absolutely delicious, isn't it? Let's unpack what's really happening here, because the surface narrative barely scratches the political reality. Cooper has just thrown down a rather significant gauntlet to Benjamin Netanyahu's government, urging Israel to urgently change course away from its renewed military offensive on Gaza. These aren't throwaway diplomatic pleasantries. This is Britain's foreign secretary essentially telling one of our key Middle Eastern allies that their current strategy is fundamentally flawed. Netanyahu, for his part, stood before the UN and declared that Israel must finish the job. That's about as clear a rejection of international pressure as you're likely to hear from a world leader. So we have Cooper saying change course, Netanyahu saying we'll finish what we started, and Trump apparently holding the keys to a deal that could make both positions irrelevant. The political sophistication at play here is genuinely remarkable. Cooper, who is widely believed to be one of the cabinet ministers who privately pushed Keir Starmer to recognize the Palestinian state, is now positioning herself as the pragmatic voice of peace. She's walking this incredible tightrope between acknowledging the horror of the humanitarian situation whilst refusing to definitively conclude that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. That refusal isn't accidental. By the way, it's calculated political positioning of the highest order. Cooper knows that calling it genocide would fundamentally alter Britain's relationship with Israel and potentially derail any peace process before it begins. So instead, she's sticking to the government line that such determinations are down to a legal process. It's diplomatic speak for not my job to make that call, but we're watching very carefully. But here's where Cooper reveals something rather profound about the current political moment. She admits that words seem hollow in response to what's happening on the ground. That's not typical foreign secretary rhetoric. That's someone acknowledging that traditional diplomatic language feels inadequate when confronted with genuine human suffering. When she talks about the screams and pain of Palestinian children, she's deliberately humanizing a conflict that's often reduced to geopolitical abstractions. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the former prime minister in the peace plan. The White House is apparently backing a proposal that would have Tony Blair head a temporary technocratic administration of Gaza. Yes, that Tony Blair. The same man who led Britain into the Iraq War in 2003, and remains one of the most polarizing figures in modern British politics. Cooper's response to questions about Blair's potential role is masterfully evasive. She twice declined to say whether he was the right person to lead this transitional authority. That's not diplomatic courtesy. That's someone who clearly has reservations but can't voice them publicly without potentially undermining a peace process. Think about the political dynamics at play here. Blair has excellent relations with Gulf states, a direct line to the White House through Jared Kushner, who's apparently the main architect of this plan and Trump's son-in-law, but is also a deeply controversial figure across much of the Middle East because of Iraq. Cooper knows this. She knows that Blair's involvement could be either the key to success or the poison pill that killed the entire process. The 21-point White House plan that's emerging apparently aligns with a UN-endorsed plan for Palestine, including no mass displacement from Gaza, no role for Hamas, and no West Bank annexation. But Foreign Office insiders are reportedly uneasy about aspects of Trump's approach. That's civil service speak for, we have serious concerns, but we're going to smile and nod because we need American leadership to make this work. Cooper's revelation about her meeting schedule tells you everything you need to know about Labour's priorities. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, was the last world leader she met as shadow foreign secretary in 2011, and the first when she became foreign secretary this month. That's not coincidence. That's deliberate political messaging about where Britain's sympathies lie. She hasn't yet met Netanyahu, despite being in New York when he addressed the UN. Again, that's not scheduling oversight. That's diplomatic positioning. Cooper is making it clear that Britain's approach to this conflict isn't going to be the traditional reflexive support for Israeli positions that has characterized much of Western diplomacy. Her assessment that there is no military solution to this that works is about as close as you'll get to a foreign secretary telling an ally that their entire strategic approach is fundamentally misguided. When she says Israel's Gaza City offensive doesn't remotely strengthen Israeli security, she's not offering gentle advice. She's delivering a fairly brutal strategic assessment. But perhaps the most revealing moment in Cooper's interview comes when she discusses the emotional weight of the situation. When she says that technical terms like humanitarian crisis feel hollow because what it's really about is the screams and pain of a toddler, she's doing something quite unusual for a foreign secretary. She's acknowledging that policy abstractions break down when confronted with human reality. This isn't typical diplomatic language. Cooper is either genuinely moved by what she's witnessed, or she's calculated that showing emotional engagement will be more politically effective than traditional Foreign Office restraint. Either way, it represents a significant departure from the usual approach. The broader political implications here are absolutely fascinating. Labour is positioning itself as a government that can finally bring moral clarity to Britain's Middle East policy while simultaneously working within the constraint of American leadership and Israeli intransigence. Cooper is threading the needle between humanitarian concern and strategic realism in a way that could define Labour's foreign policy approach for years to come. Her warning that the process is fragile and faces many obstacles is classic expectation management, but it's also genuine diplomatic realism. Cooper knows that peace processes can collapse overnight, that international consensus can evaporate when domestic political pressures intensify, and that the gap between diplomatic possibility and ground reality can be vast. The timing of all this is crucial. Trump has just taken office. Netanyahu is under immense domestic pressure, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached levels that even traditional Israeli allies are finding difficult to defend. Cooper is suggesting that these factors have created a unique diplomatic window, but windows close. What's particularly intriguing is Cooper's subtle but clear criticism of Putin's deliberate provocation regarding Russian drones over Poland and Scandinavian countries. She's connecting Middle Eastern peace processes to European security concerns in a way that suggests Labour sees these conflicts as interconnected rather than separate diplomatic challenges. Her call for America to go much further on Russian sanctions, particularly on oil and gas, is Cooper essentially saying that Trump's conditional approach to sanctions isn't sufficient. That's a Labour foreign secretary telling the American president that his strategy needs to be more robust. The diplomatic confidence required to make such statements suggests Cooper believes Britain has more leverage in this relationship than many might assume. The political subtext throughout Cooper's positioning is clear. Labour believes it can navigate complex international relationships whilst maintaining moral clarity about British values. Whether that proves sustainable when diplomatic pressure intensifies remains to be seen. What we're witnessing here is the emergence of a distinctive Labour approach to foreign policy, one that combines humanitarian concern with strategic pragmatism, that acknowledges American leadership whilst maintaining independent British positions, and that refuses to accept that complex conflicts are beyond resolution. Cooper's suggestion that we're on the brink of a Gaza peace deal might prove optimistic, but her approach to the challenge reveals something significant about how this Labour government intends to conduct itself on the world stage. Whether that approach proves effective will define not just Cooper's tenure as Foreign Secretary, but potentially Labour's entire approach to international relations. The stakes couldn't be higher, the politics couldn't be more complex, and the potential for both breakthrough and breakdown couldn't be more real. Cooper is betting that diplomatic momentum can overcome political reality, and we're about to find out whether she's right. Don't miss our next deep dive into the political machinations that shape your world. Subscribe now, because at UK Connors, we don't just report the news, we decode the power games that create it.